Hello, welcome. We're going to take a look at more patch changes. I have not seen these yet, so you're going to get my initial reaction live as it happens. This is their final iteration of patch 1.36.2 for the PTR, aiming to come out early June, so not too long. So they've got a bunch of added modified changes along here, then items, creeps, and then the master changelog. So this includes everything as it is. But these are the changes that they've made effectively up until when you get to the master changelog. So let's see. Searing Arrow's mana cost change reverted. Oh no. From 5 back to 8. So they're whacking it back to 8, but they're keeping the damage increase by the looks of it. Force of Nature mana cost increase from 85 to 95. It's still cheap for what it is, honestly. Extra 10 mana, but it's normally like 125 mana. Tranquility cooldown reduced from 120 seconds to 100 seconds, so that's going back to being quicker. Remember when that was on a 1 minute cooldown? That was crazy, Tranquility, when it was on a 1 minute cooldown. Fan of Knife's target changed from 567 to 666. Mark of the Beast. Max damage is increased, apart from the last part, which is interesting. So it goes up a tiny bit at level 2, and then level 3 is actually a bit knocked down. But I think these are all still improvements on the original damage. And it's 666, so it can hit more targets. Apart from that last bit as well. So it looks like they've toned down the power of a high-level Warden, but kept her stronger in the early to mid-game. Which I think is fair, because Warden is kind of a bit of a god-tier hero. If you can get her past level 6. Level 7 ideally. Because then she's got her ultimate, she's got a level 3 ability and level 2 blink. So she's quite strong if you can get her there, but the challenge is getting her there. This is why you don't see Warden very often. She's a bit of a glass cannon in that regard. Fan of Nice damage changed a little bit up there. Okay. Wisp health buffed from 120 to 130. Looks like Wisps have been working out in the gym. I think the reason why that is I remember seeing someone post a complaint about why Death Knights are able to coil and right-click and kill a Wisp. So I'm assuming that now they can't coil and right-click and kill a Wisp, but maybe. Not on level 1 Death Knight. He might not necessarily have enough damage to do 30 damage on his first hit, unless he gets a higher damage roll. I suspected Death Knight doesn't do quite that much damage at level 1. So I think that's the whole purpose, because coil should do 100 damage. And then you right-click to finish off the mob. Nature's Blessing, lumber cost reduced. That's fine. It gives Night Elf a bit of an easier time getting their trees moving quicker and being tankier. Effective against bats and whatnot, so I don't mind that change. Haunted Goldmine build time reduced by 5 seconds. A very, very specific change there. Who complained about that one? Oh, the gold mine. Urgh. I'm so sick of it taking an extra 5 seconds longer than it should. That's so bizarre. Curse can no longer target mechanical units again. Reverted. So it means that siege engines shouldn't be affected. I guess gyrocopters shouldn't be affected either. So you can't use banshees to counter those two so easily. Okay, Wand of Negation now has a 5-second cooldown, so you can't spam it. That's the new item from the Undead shop. Apparently you require a Temple of the Damned for it, so that's very specific. So if you went to the shop, you would have to have a Temple of the Damned, otherwise you couldn't actually pick up the item. Which is unusual, because I don't think there's ever been an item in the shop for any of the races that requires a specific building, other than Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Ghoul Frenzy damage reduction reverted back to 35%, so we got our damage back on ghouls, so they're going to be nice and powerful. But the Ghoul Frenzy movement speed bonus reduced from 80 to 50. I don't really play undead, apart from in 4 versus 4 RT, and that's one of the fun things, is fast-moving ghouls, moving like little ninjas, going inside of people's bases and they're just sieging down the big, you know, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 castle. But yeah, reducing their movement speed makes them a bit more slower now. Obviously, that can be compensated for with the Death Knight Unholy Aura, but I think that's probably a right balance change for 1 versus 1. It makes it so ghouls aren't quite so flexible. But it's kind of a like, I don't like anything made slower often because it just means it's less fun. Ghoul Frenzy research time reduced from 60 to 50. Yeah, that's fine. Frost attack duration on heroes increased. Why? That's so obnoxious. Undead frost, like Frostworms, Nerubian Tower, Black Citadel. Just getting hit by that is so tedious to deal with. So I'm not a fan of slowing down heroes that often. Abomination base damage increased from 32 to 34. Big damage there. Making them a bit more valid for DPS other than just crypt fiends. Tauren changes reverted back to tier 3 and have reduced build time. So they're no longer tier 2 anymore. Remember they made a change to try to make them tier 2? I think that was odd. Possible. But I think the fundamental issue that Orc have, that I mentioned beforehand, is that they're very much a pacing race. They go fast, they go hard, they generally don't take breaks, and they stay on you the whole time. So they use raiders, a lot of aggression, and Taurens were quite slow and clunky. So they didn't really fit into that. And you could always have a grunt, get the increased health on the grunt at tier 2, and have pillage working on the grunt to use the grunt alongside the raiders. So the Taurens were hard to fit into that army. Other than if you go mass Taurens, and you just convert to that somehow with some headhunters and spirit walkers behind it. Serpent Ward base damage reduced! I don't like that. I like my Serpent Wards. They're fun. Let's nerf my Shadow Hunter. That's got to be the level 3 one, because that's a lot of damage, to be fair. 47 to 45. Wind Rider experience reduced from 4 to 3. Grubby will be happy about that one. I skipped the Tauren's movement speed increase. Oh, shit. Tauren's speed movement increased from 270 to 290. That's pretty massive. That's a lot quicker. 290 is not like super fast, but that's much faster. He should be as fast as a hero now, like a paladin or something. Didn't the paladin get moved to 300 movement speed though recently? He should be as fast as one of the slower heroes, basically, the Tauren. Whereas at 270, it's moving pretty slow. Not quite as slow as a meat wagon. Those were pretty damn slow, but definitely on the slower side. That can definitely help them get into position better and be more of an aggressive threat and less easy to kite and sort of manipulate. So that's probably a good change. Goblin Zeppelin food cost increased from 0 to 1. I do not like this. I hope they revert this change. The Goblin Zeppelin is a very strong unit. It can be very powerful in the hands of a skilled player. However, there's a lot of counterplay to it. And there's an interesting sort of dynamic between how the players behave with one another that both know how to utilize a Goblin Zeppelin. So if there's a Goblin lab nearby and you're running towards the Goblin Zeppelin, your opposing player probably recognizes what you're going to try to do, which is often the case of pick up a Zeppelin when your hero is low on health so you can save the hero or perhaps a unit. So then they'll run to the Goblin lab as well, and there's almost a race to buy the Zeppelin. And what I don't like is because it has a food cap now at 1 instead of 0, you could have, say for example, 36 out of 36 food or 50 out of 50 food. And whilst you went to go do a fun, cool trick, which is to pick up the Zeppelin and save the hero, and it will look really good and be interesting, fun gameplay dynamic as well as interesting for viewers to watch, it will say, more food is required. And then you won't be able to do it. And that's boring. So that, for me, I do not like. There's never fun getting caught out by food. I know that from playing Legion TD. So, 0. Keep that at 0. Sundering Blades lumber cost reduced from 175 to 150. Sure, that still seems like a lot. Remember when you got Sundering Blades for free? And now they sort of made it so you have to pay for it again, I guess. I don't feel like I'm paying for Sundering Blades. So I think they re-implemented it in this PTR because I haven't played the PTR since. Rifleman health increased from 535 to 545. That's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what the reason for that is, other than to maybe deal with Frost Nova a bit better. I can't think of exactly why they got an increase on that, because I thought people were complaining riflemen were quite strong. Dragonhawk Rider base damage increased from 17 to 19. That could definitely be implemented. I don't think anyone would notice, because Dragonhawk Riders are barely used for damage. They're pretty weak source. They're sort of more akin to fairy dragons in terms of their power output. And they cost free food as well, Dragonhawk Riders. Flame Strike channel time reduced from 0.9 to 0.8. I think that will help a lot of people not cancel the Flame Strike. Because a lot of people can accidentally cancel Flame Strike. They'll cast it and then they'll move. Because you have to wait just a little moment before you move after casting a Flame Strike. There's like a very specific amount of time. As you can see, 0.9 and now it's going to be 0.8. So less chance to scuff that up. Control magic mana per summoned hit point reduced from 45 to 35. Oh my goodness, that's a pretty big buff, right? For spellbreakers. Control magic mana per summoned hit point. That's a pretty big buff. The way I read that is it means that if you're trying to steal a summon unit, like a water elemental that has 500 health, for example, you're going from 45 to 35 per usage of mana per summoned hit point. So you should be able to have a lot more mana left over. Unless I've read that the opposite way. I'm interpreting it as you would have a lot more mana left over. Which gives you more flexibility. Or even more potential to actually steal a summoned unit that has like a specific amount of health. Demolisher movement speed increased from 220 to 240. They did move hella slow. The same thing for Glaive Thrower, so there's more flexibility. I'm not really going to complain about movement speed. So, they always manage to get a typo in these. Demolisher. Whatever. Close enough. That's fine with those changes. Circuit of Nobility cost increased from 175 to 250. The Mini Crown of Kings, which is +2 to all stats. Now going to cost you 250, which might be a bit much. But I suppose it does mean that the player going for the early power spike, for example, Blade Master roll into a shop to sell his town portal to buy a circlet so he can power creep a little bit faster because he's going to get rewarded by killing creeps faster, so he'll get gold faster from killing the creeps as well as the items they reward and leveling. He's got to pay that extra 75 gold for it because this is something that has definitely been noticed is the Circlet of Nobility is a pretty powerful item. 250 might be a bit much though. 225? Happy medium, maybe? Gloves of Haste attack speed reduced from 20% to 17. So that is the midway mark, because it used to be 15%, and now it's being knocked down to 17. Probably sensible to do 17.5. Just something tiny bit more than the original, because otherwise it could end up being a pretty strong late game item. And you can sometimes get a fair few Gloves of Haste because they're lower tier items. And you stack them all on a high level hero and find out that they do really well. Creeps, mana burn, value reduced. Yes, that's nice to see. Does that count for all of them? Like the Fellstalker? He normally mana burns. I think that is the case, because he normally mana burns for 100. So they're not going to be anywhere near as annoying now. Force of Nature summons reduced. So that's the, not the Wendigo, but the Sasquatch. The Sassy Sasquatch. He is going to summon 2 Treants now instead of 3. Force of Nature mana cost reduced from 175 to 100 though, so you can cast it more often. They normally have quite large mana pools anyway, so. Pulverized Sea Giant reduced. That's probably a good thing, because that's just annoying sometimes. If you're using squishier units like ghouls or footmen to fight versus those, you can take a lot of damage if you get unlucky with the pulverized procs. Cripple reduced from 6010 to 2010. Wow, 2010. That costs them nothing. That one's a bit odd, isn't it? Oh, is that just the time it lasts for? 20 seconds. Okay, that might make more sense. Cripple cost reduced. There you go, down to 125. Centaur Archer changed from heavy to medium. Interesting. I think that's fine. Could be magic kills that too quickly, but you don't tend to get magic until later, and Centaur Archer isn't that high tier. So I guess that's just for more flexibility between the centaurs. I think a lot of them have heavy armor. Impaler armor type changed from heavy to medium, and it's increased health. And then the sorcerer from medium. A lot of them are going medium. It means they're going to be a lot more vulnerable to footman grunts and all that. And there you go. The rest of these changes are basically just stating what is going to be happening in total for the patch. So, for example, the troll headhunter changes, which weren't mentioned in this specific one, but they've been changed in previous PTR updates. Healing wards reduced, serpent ward base damage, Sag. So orcs kind of getting mostly buffs, I would say there. Night elves, definitely a lot of buffs from what I can tell. Human, the polymorph one was interesting. I think they kind of got some nerfs overall, although not necessarily. No, I'd say they got a decent chunk of buffs. Most of the buffs seem to be in places that shouldn't really affect the game, because the nerfs came in first is Sundering Blades, where they're strong, and the buffs are on units where they're not necessarily utilized quite so much, apart from the Rifleman. The Rifleman one I don't quite understand. Undead, Haunted Goldmine. Wow, Undead got a lot of changes. They got big changes with their weapon, their items as well in their shop. I think overall Undead have been put into a better position to be slightly less obnoxious with these changes. But I don't think they've changed that much, despite how many things are mentioned here. Because most of the changes, apart from this one that's going to stick, have been kind of reverted with Undead. Good old neutral. Firelord Volcano. I don't know why the Firelord's getting a hard time, but there you go. Naga Sea Witch. Tornado speed base and minimum speed increase, so she's more effective. I don't like that Goblin Zeppelin change. That's scuffed to me. And then there you go. So those are the balance changes. As usual, the patches tend to affect balance because it's an easier thing to update than actual scuffness of Reforged. But if you did make it to this part of the video, thank you for watching. Like the video and have a nice day.